What's the pettiest reason you've ever broken up with an ex? Story 1. My roommate, his GF, and I were on our way back from a bar when Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf came on the playlist. About 30 seconds in, she obnoxiously goes, "I don't like this song," and then continues to obnoxiously sing over it. That's when I realized she sucked. After we got back, she kept hitting on my other roommate while I sat up against the living room wall with a beer, and it was pretty peaceful knowing it wasn't going to last, and I didn't really give a shoot about it. So I just drank my beer and watched and laughed, lol. Story 2. She got mad at me, then hung up the phone. I called her back and she answered, then immediately hung up. I figured, screw it, she can call me back if she wants to talk, otherwise I guess we're done. She tried calling me back a month later to say that she was breaking up with me because I didn't call her anymore. I told her that I was done with her weeks ago when she wouldn't answer my calls. Story 3. We weren't officially dating anymore, just considering getting back together. I have no idea why I reacted this way, but at some point we were at a friend's house hanging out. He went to go downstairs to use the washroom, but paused at the top of the stairs to lift a leg, let the gnarliest fart rip. Did a whole make a fist and bring the elbow down motion as he did it. I immediately lost all attraction to him. I'm not even grossed out by farts. Still not sure what the psychology is behind it, but I called it off with him 2 days later. Answer: I used to be with the guy who would make me laugh my jerk off doing stuff like this. Then we broke up because he cheated. When I was in the period of still talking to him and considering giving him another chance, my feelings for him had changed to the point where things I used to find funny and endearing, like this, just became annoying and gross. When the love and respect isn't there anymore, you see things way differently. Story 4. We had been dating for a few months, and suddenly he started saying, "I just know you're going to break up with me." He'd get all sad about it, and he became depressing to be around. No matter how much I tried to reassure him, when he wouldn't quit, then I made his nightmare come true and dumped him. It was entirely a self-fulfilling prophecy. Answer: I have never been so bad as to say stuff like that out loud, but when I was younger, I felt that all the time inside. I needed some therapy to help me figure out how to stop the intrusive thoughts. Eventually, they just go away on their own with increased confidence. But yeah, I don't blame you because nobody wants to be depressed all the time. But I also empathize with him, assuming he wasn't a male body part about it. Story 5. We weren't quite together yet, but we had been hooking up and were heading towards exclusivity. One day I told her I was sad and she didn't ask why and just started talking about her day. For some reason, that just got me to stop wanting to be around her. Story 6. This is awful, but he had a gigantic belt buckle that said Canada and had geese flying and a moose. And everywhere we went, people pointed and laughed at it, and I couldn't take it anymore. He told me I was the shallowest person he had ever met. Maybe he's right, but I dislike that fudge thing. Story 7. My first girlfriend after college broke up with me because, in her words, it was 10:16 and I decided to close my eyes and open them again, and that if it was still 10:16 when I opened them, I wouldn't break up with you. But if it was 10:17, I would. It's 10:17. So I was fine with it because we had always been explicit with each other that the relationship was temporary fun and not an attempt to find a forever person. We went to sleep, woke up, watched International Velvet, and had one last breakup. Intimacy, hurrah, and then that was it. Except I did move in with her for 18 months a short while later, just as friends. Story 8. GF kept playfully tapping the back of my head. Told her, "You need to stop that shoot. It is bugging me." Kept doing it. I warned her one last time. I was driving her car and we were talking about something and she did it again. Stopped at a red light, put the car in park, got out and walked away. Left her sitting there in the passenger seat, saw a bus at a stop, jumped on, never looked back. Story 9. He went through my iTunes. I asked him not to. That judgy jerk did exactly what I was afraid he would do. Your taste in music sucks. I happily dumped him right then and there. Another one microwaved his shrimp scampi in the styrofoam takeout box. He had no problem eating it with all those chemicals that just melted into it. I told him I deserved better. There's no coming back from eating styrofoam poisoned shrimp scampi. Story 10. I only saw her for roughly a month, but I ended it because she could not hang out without drinking. The one time we did it was like pulling teeth to get her to have a conversation. No personality without an adult beverage. Wasn't looking for a barfly either. Story 11. She liked to sleep in on weekends, like past noon sleep in. I can't do that. I'm wide awake at 7 a.m., but she disliked the idea of me not being in bed with her. But she also disliked the idea that I was awake and staring at the ceiling or fudge around on my phone. So I was expected to stay in bed, motionless, not breathing, for 5 hours while she slept in. So yeah, we broke up. Story 12. I stopped seeing a girl because she had really bad odor coming from her female body part. I've been around enough of them, and something was really wrong with this one. This wasn't just didn't shower after the gym. This thing smelled like a rotting corpse that literally made me gag. I assume a major bacterial issue. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just said they aren't supposed to smell good. Easier to call things off rather than press the issue further and make her feel bad or act like I know more about what female body parts should smell like than a woman. Although to be fair, I assume I have smelled more female body part than most straight women who aren't in the medical field. Story 13. He went to the hairdressers and came back with half his head bleached and the other half jet black. He was a great guy, but his need to shock just overtook everything. He needed to grow up and find a way to settle into just being happy in his own skin somehow. Our paths crossed, but we weren't on the same journey. Story 14. I stopped dating someone because we went to the movies. They paid. I said thank you. A week later, they blew up about me not saying thank you after the cinema. When I pointed out, I did, and I said it right after they paid for drinks. They then went, oh yeah, but never apologized and tried to pretend like that hadn't literally been calling me every name under the sun a second ago. Story 15. Her accent. I'm from Yorkshire. She is from East London. I've got no dislike towards anyone in the UK except the gardener because he's a male body part. But yeah, I couldn't stand her accent. When she would talk, I would be gritting my teeth like, shut up. I then moved back up north with the military and blamed it on distance, which was one reason, but not the main reason. Story 16. We met the year after we graduated college. I got a bachelor's. He got his master's. I found out sometime into the relationship that he was $250K in debt in private student loans for a music degree. He didn't want to teach either. College seems to pay professors well. I just felt he made a really stupid financial decision by getting 2 degrees totaling $250K, the cost of a decent house back then, in a career that is very niche and hard to make money in. He just wanted to keep playing the piano and doing gigs. Like, what was the point of the schooling then? I remember his first payments were like $1,500. We were 23, 24. That was nuts to me. He was a nice guy, but I just couldn't do it. Story 17. Dated for several months. I paid for everything. She wouldn't get dinner with me after I learned my grandfather was about to pass thousands of miles away because she had acting class the next day. We were 28. She said we could go when I got back from the funeral. I didn't take her up on that offer. Lumeo. Story 18. I'm in the service industry, and I watched this dude I was dating for months be so rude to our server at breakfast one morning and tipped poorly. I left cash on the way out without him noticing. He walked me to my car, and I never went out slept with him again. Story 19. I asked her to pick up my dry cleaning when she got out of work, since I was going to night school and I would be home too late. Add to the fact that I had no clean shirts to wear the next day to work, I told her it was really important. I get home around 10 p.m., and she told me she chose to get her nails done, and the dry cleaners was in the opposite direction, so she didn't want to kiss her appointment. The dry cleaners was closed when she finally got there. I knew at that moment I couldn't count on her. We broke up a month later. I moved out, and we were divorced within a year. Story 20. I arrived at college a very mature 18-year-old, having had my wild drinking done and dusted from 12 to 18. She arrived a sheltered child who was sweet for the first 6 months, but became progressively wilder. She wanted to go out drinking and stay out all night, literally every night. I was too old for that SH at 18. Looking back, it's hilarious, really. Story 21. I dated a woman for a few months, absolutely gorgeous, tremendously funny, and great intimacy. It was too good to be true. She was really into esotericism, exorcism, astrology, moon cycles, spirits. She used to blame the bloody moon for her being a jerk. Fudge hell. What a fudge waste. Appleton. Story 22. I think I knew subconsciously we were already headed in that direction, but I had a puzzle in flight at my house and was working on a little section one afternoon. He came over and insisted on working on the same section with me, like looking over my shoulder, looking for the same puzzle piece I was. Dude, no. Have no problem with him working on another section. I'm not a monster, but it was just too much and I felt smothered. Broke up with him a few days after that. Did not cite this as the reason, LOL. I got back together with an ex who I married 7 years ago, and he met his now fiancée shortly after that, so it worked out great for both of us. He was very much not happy about it at the time, though. Story 23. She only ate with her F-king fingers, like 35-year-old. eating mashed potatoes with her fingers. Then when she was done, she gave her hands one big final shake, thrust downwards toward her plate to get all the shed off of it, and wipe the rest off with an inadequate napkin. And she didn't wash afterwards. Her fingernails were black. Because I know you will ask why I stayed with her. She gave amazing oral. I'm not even joking. I'm like 20 years after that relationship, married with 4 kids, and I still think about it till this day. Story 24. The first time I invited them to my place, he excused himself to go to the bathroom, then proceeded to play YouTube on his phone at the loudest volume possible while on the can. After he got out, I told him I wasn't feeling well all of a sudden, and then never texted him back. Story 25. It was a combination of things, but the final nail in the coffin was him pushing me to open up about my awful childhood and why I had SH scars, then proceeding to tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to him. That being in middle school, his friends told him he couldn't sit with them anymore. He ended up bawling and curling up in a pathetic ball, while I was left feeling very shoot for opening up and being vulnerable, only to have to coddle him and support his tragedy, like I'm not one to trauma compare or whatever. But there's a fundamental difference between enduring a literal house of horrors and being told by your friend group in middle school that you cannot sit with them anymore. I actually would have been more than happy to support him through this at a different time. However, the timing was just so childish and frankly rude. Story 26. A girl I was dating said she couldn't go out on Friday because she was spending the night with her dogs. Apparently, she had been working a lot and hadn't chilled with them in a while. I asked her if she wanted to do anything Saturday, and she was non-committal. I said I was going to a party on Sunday, and she replied she doesn't like going to parties. Story 27. Wasn't someone I officially started dating, but someone I was talking to long distance for a good while, and we had plans for him to come visit me in the works. Then he sent me an AI video after Pierre Poilievre won the by-election in Alberta of him dancing in Parliament to Without Me by Eminem, surrounded by a bunch of crying sheep wearing shirts that said elbows up, and he genuinely thought it was hilarious. 2 things I loathe and he knew it. PP and AI. Yeah, no, but... Story 28. She asked me to help dry the dishes. We just had a long talk about how I was tired of her testing me to see if I truly cared. We had an agreement she would stop. Later, I cooked us dinner and she was doing the cleaning. She asked me to help dry it. When I got up, there were only 2 plates that weren't done. She really didn't need any help, just wanted to see me get up and walk over. I walked out and never saw her again. Story 29. I was dating a girl once, drove 12 hours to her place to watch a movie. I brought the movie and a pizza. She didn't have anything except tap water to drink. Like all I wanted was a soda. Never saw her again. Pretty petty, but thought she put 0 effort into it, so F it. Story 30. We started as friends, then dated for about a month. One night we went out drinking with friends, and I was too tipsy to drive, so I crashed at his place. In the middle of the night, my tummy did a rumble, and I absolutely blew up his bathroom. It was terrible. I was so embarrassed that I ghosted him. We're still really good friends, but he didn't ask about it until a couple years later, and I confessed. He about died laughing. I also ghosted a guy after 2 dates because he laughed at me for crying during Wakanda Forever. Story 31. I was 13 and just didn't know anything. I wrote her this sappy note about how if you love something, you need to let it go. And then if it comes back, it's yours forever. She was so confused. ETA, wait, I just remembered why I wrote that. I was on the phone with her, and she said she had to go because her brother needed the phone. I hung up and called my cousin, who said he would call me back because he was talking to her. Years later, we were working at a store together, and I told her why I actually broke up with her. She'd had no idea. Had I called her out on it, she probably would have been like, yeah, that's bad, because she didn't even like my cousin like that. She was just a dumb kid, too. Story 32. I had an old TV that you could only turn on with a knife. This guy I dated comes to my house, turns the TV on with a knife, and leaves the knife on the floor. I come to the room where he's watching TV, and there's a fudge knife on the floor between him and the TV. Like he couldn't put it on a table or a TV stand. It was just on the floor, LOL. I could not handle this level of carelessness and laziness. Threw the whole man out. I never told him why. He never knew. He probably thought I was moody or something. Story 33. A very pretty girl I met at a wedding. I felt that he liked me. She was a cousin of the bride. She slept there. She brings me to her room under a bogus pretext. I'm delighted. Once in the room, probably to say something and dispel the embarrassment, she shows me a photo on the wall. Keith Richard doing a guitar solo, and wonder if it's Jimi Hendrix. I left with my self-esteem intact. Story 34. He ruined my Barbie hairdressing head. About 30 years later, he contacted me on Facebook with a really touching message about how he was the little boy who lived across the street, and he wanted to reach out and say hi after he saw me comment on a mutual friend's post. Of course, I responded to this with telling him that he ruined my Barbie head, and that's why I stopped talking to him, because I'm a jerk. Story 35. I had to break up with a woman after 3 years of dating, really having a great time because she said, the only place acceptable to fart is on the toilet, the only proper receptacle. I laughed out loud as I walked out the door. She called for weeks, begged me to start over, but I declined. I saw her at a community event, and she grabbed me, held me tight to her body, and said, "You ruined my life." I walked away. Nobody gonna tell me where I cannot fart. Story 36. Awful kisser. She took the phrase sucking face extremely literally and to the point that it hurt. It felt like she was trying to put her teeth behind my teeth. Tried to tell her what I liked and subtly tell her to ease up, but she couldn't take the hint. Story 37. My boyfriend at the time came one night after a night with his friends and told me things got too serious. He is just not ready for serious relationship. He is only 20 and we have moved in together too soon. I told him no, we have been married for 17 years. Story 38. The first girl I ever had an intimacy experience with in 8th grade. She was a cheerleader, and not to toot my own horn, but I was our star, running back and shortstop. Everyone said we were meant to be together. I found out in the summer between 8th and 9th grade that she was a plant substance smoker. Not a stoner, but just a plant substance smoker at parties and ate edibles and whatnot. Mind you, this was like 2012, and I was part of the generation that was hammered with DR, and essentially had many of us convinced if you ever did a substances, your life was over. So I broke up with her over text a few days later, and that was that. Little did I know I would be burning blunts with seniors on the baseball football team. Only a couple months later, hello, lame. I'd also say another crazy reason to break up with someone was what I did the summer before college. I had met a chick off Instagram. It had just become super popular, and we hit it off pretty well. I was 18, and she was maybe a year or two younger than me. Long story short, we hang out that whole summer knowing I was leaving to go play college baseball, but we did have a very good time together. I knew long distance wasn't going to be wise, and we weren't ever officially dating, but we saw each other pretty much every day. And she was actually the first girl I ever gave a ride on the back of one of my motorcycles too. Anyhow, like one of the last weeks of that summer, I went and spent the night with her while her parents were away. I had brought a bag of plant substance with me, expecting us to maybe smoke a joint and be done there. After we smoked, she pulls out a bag of mushrooms. Wasn't my first time, but it was certainly my first time actually tripping hard. We both ate probably 4, maybe 5 grams. 30 minutes later, we start to get intimate and starting having intimacy, and it'll be darned if I don't have the most out-of-body, uncomfortable experiences of my life. I felt like I was outside of my body looking down from an aerial POV and was so uncomfortable. I felt like the universe was telling me I shouldn't be doing that with her or something crazy like that. I proceed to pull my pants up, tell her I gotta go, and drive to my homie's house that was close by. Not my proudest moment, but it was a moment nonetheless. Story 39. I dislike to say this, but I broke up with a girl for being Jewish. For the record, I don't care what religion someone follows. When we met, she said she was Jewish but didn't follow the religion or culture at all. Throughout the relationship, she kept introducing me to Jewish foods, movies, bands, etc. I didn't mind in the slightest, as they were all cool new experiences for me. But then she only wanted these experiences. This eventually transitioned into insulting me for liking things that weren't Jewish. I found a funny new comedy movie. I don't like this. It should have had Andy Samberg in it. I booked a date at a new restaurant. This food isn't good. We should have gone out to a local Jewish restaurant instead. For not participating in the culture, it sure felt like I was being dragged into it. When I brought this up, she insisted that she had no allegiance to it whatsoever, even though I had 25 examples of her not liking something because it wasn't Jewish enough. The whole thing was very odd, and we eventually got into a huge argument because I said Adam Sandler only had like 4 good movies. She got so heated she ended up breaking up with me, which was fine by me. Story 40. I was 16 and on the phone with my boyfriend, who I was absolutely nuts over. His mom walked past his bedroom door while we were talking, and he called out, "Oh, Mom, by the way, can you please come cut my toenails tonight? They need it." And she was all sure, "Greg." And I was like, "TF, OMG. No, oh boy." Story 41. Rich lawyer, nice guy. I grew up on a farm in Texas, and he knew I knew how to hunt and didn't mind guns. I was at his house, enjoying some scotch and watching a show with him while he cleaned one of his guns, and he made this weird shudder of pleasure. Like, ooh, yes, so smooth. Just weirded me out. I left that night and took all my things. Sorry, nah. Feel bad about it now, as he had bought us plane tickets for vacation and everything. Woof. Story 42. Our first few dates were more cutesy, mini golf, batting cage, walk around the lake, and didn't involve meals. And when we finally had dinner together, about 2 months in, I discovered he was a shoot tipper. This was around 2006, 2007, and we went to Applebee's. The bill was probably 30 and he tipped like 2. Story 43. Not an ex, but someone I went on a few dates with. We went on a dinner and I noticed that he didn't leave the waitress a tip. I thought I had noticed it in the past on other dates, but was unsure. Once I confirmed he actually wasn't leaving a tip, it was our last date. Story 44. I worked in jewelry. He gave me a $10K budget for a ring. I picked a 3-carat I could get in his price range. My dream ring. He told me no, it would make him look like a gold digger. You make $60K a year WTF, and a chump to all of his friends. Literally, my career was in jewelry. Story 45. I asked if he thought we should break up. I'm autistic and was just wondering literally if he thought that. He said, if you think we should, then it's okay. I said, okay. Then we're over. Many years later was telling the story of the breakup, and he said, wait, I never broke up with you. We each never wanted to, but by then too late. I had married someone else and had kids. Story 46. We went on a few dates. We used to have great conversations, and I liked that about him, and I didn't like his name, but the main reason is that he nutted in less than 30 seconds the first time we had intimacy. He was huge, and I was looking forward to enjoying that. I decided to give him a second chance. A few days later, I thought he could have been nervous or something, but the same thing happened, so I ended it. Story 47. He got cast in a show. I did not. I threw a temper tantrum when the cast list was posted and broke up with him. Turns out the director wanted to offer me a paid role as dance captain, swing, and assistant choreographer. I accepted and was basically running rehearsals with the men in the cast because they needed more time and attention. I was such a dummy, but it ended up being a great experience in the end. Yay, Arts College and Theater School drama. Story 48. I had become friends with his sister, and I didn't like the idea of being his GF as much as I liked the idea of being his sister's friend. 20 years on, his sister and I are still decently close, and she doesn't really talk to him anymore. He fell down the conspiracy hole. We're hoping when she comes home for a visit, she can stay with us. Story 49. While it didn't cause an instantaneous breakup, my ex talking about how she had a devil's three-way was pretty much the end of things. She decided to let me know when we were at the local pool hall in front of most of my friends. It was embarrassing and emasculating. We had an agreement that the past was the past, and she decided it wasn't. My thinking is when I'm with someone, I'm with them. The past doesn't matter, but I also don't want to know because I don't want to think about it. Story 50. This may stray out of petty and into human garbage territory. When I was maybe 19, I started going out with a girl. And from day one, I'd say these things like, we can go out for 6 months. And I think in 6 months, we'll have learned everything we need from each other and we'll break up. And she'd laugh, etc. We had a great active relationship and saw each other all the time. But as the 6-month thing came along, for some reason, I felt it was important to live up to the joke and break up with her on our 6-month anniversary, and did. Months later, I heard she wasn't doing Barbados and was dating dirtbags criminal types, and I felt terrible. Decades later, I still feel terrible. I hope she is fine. Story 51. She did the tired whiskey drink with every drink all the time. You know, in movies where someone just went through something very hard or very emotional, and they take a swig of whiskey and let it fill their cheeks and then suck it through their teeth and swallow with a hard ah. She did it with every drink, milk, soda, water, whiskey, didn't matter. One day we were helping her parents clean their yard, and she did it after 10 minutes of work. And as I watched her do it, I asked myself, can I handle this for the next couple of years? I said no out loud by accident. We only dated for 4 months, but man, I still can't get the sound of the ah out of my head. Story 52. Was somewhat dating this girl, as in, we hung out often, but we only went to a bar, bang at her place, and immediately fall asleep in her amazing mattress. Never had serious conversations, and only hung out to drink and bang. One day she got mad at me for something I did the night before, but it was another dude, not me, as I hadn't seen her in a week or so. I tried to explain this, but she was convinced. I said, I'm glad we aren't together exclusively because I'd break up with you for being ridiculous and annoying. She obviously got more upset and said I would never break up with her. She was smoking hot and definitely out of my league if we were exclusive. I acted sad that we weren't officially dating exclusive, etc., and asked her if she wanted to be. She She said yes, and then I broke up with her just to prove her wrong. Coolest part is right after she laughed and said, darn, fair game. I actually really liked you and knew you had commitment issues and didn't want to mess up what we had. I said, really? She said, ha, no, get out. Married 10 years now. Hot jokes on her. Story 53. It'll sound petty and even a bit narcissistic, but she was far too cool. No, I'm not being coy about how she was constantly me feel lesser or undermining me. I mean exactly what I said. She was vastly too cool. If coolness was something you could measure on a log scale ranging 1 to 5, she, an academic superstar, how I met her, mildly successful musician and model, was probably around a 4.5. I also an academic superstar and also a turbo nerd who really wants to talk about France and potatoes and the esoteric rules of fencing and how Battletech was almost certainly one of the crapsack universes that 40K has seemingly forgotten. It was supposed to be a parody of Am, charitably perhaps a 2. A half point having been issued because there is nothing I love more than hearing a nerd be nerdy about their obsession. The problem was that while we got along fine, there was virtually no connection. She was a musician, and I like music, but not the sort she played. She was brilliant, but we only shared the one class ever. Her model gig had out of town much of the time, and when not that it was the band, and when not that it was the homework. That so constantly being out of direct contact was not the problem, as you might expect, but that when we were together, we had only parts of what a relationship might require. We got along but never clicked. Whatever I wanted to do was never what she wanted to do. So one day about a month and a half into the improbable relationship, we were meeting for coffee and instead opted for the closest thing to an amicable breakup as might be possible. I didn't tell her that the problem was that she was too cool. I just pointed out that I'm a turbo nerd shut in and our interest for how to spend time outside of a lecture hall wasn't likely to intersect all that often. We bored one another to tears, her with her coolness, me with my nerdery. And so we became second-order friends. That person you know at a party that you'll talk with for a bit and then move on. Story 54. We were in a serious relationship and talking about the future. We discussed how you would handle having kids. I told him that if I was expected to give birth a few times, then I expected him to get a vasectomy when we were done having little ones. He outright refused, saying, I don't want my male body part to stop working. He thought a vasectomy caused a person to become impotent. This man was in grad school for education. I had to dump him for being the dumbest, most willingly uninformed person I've ever met. Story 55. He was such a male body part. The very last straw came after a fight we had about his inability to respond to my texts. He would argue with me and say, I'm not on my phone all night. I'm not checking it. A few nights later, he came to the bar I worked at with some friends and spent probably 75 of the night on his phone. Story 56. An ex-girlfriend asked me why I was holding doors for her, seating her at the table, opening and closing the car door for her. I said I was being a gentleman. I was also hoping and praying she would not want to go out again. When she saw we shouldn't see each other anymore, I thanked God and asked if that was what she wanted. She said yes. We said our goodbyes and I dodged a bullet. Story 57. Let's see. 1, we weren't really a couple. I was 16 and he was 21. He wanted to be friends, but away from my family, he kept pressuring me into stuff I wasn't interested in. So I told him to remove himself from my social circle. 2, I was 17 and my high school crush asked me out, only to tell me that we were too similar after 2 weeks of dating. We had the same views, hobbies, etc. I still don't understand. 3, we were together 17-20, then his mom died. We both had a mental breakdown and he started sleeping with our neighbor. 4, after that I tried dating my old friend, only to find out on our second date that he's married with a kid now he forgot to tell me. 5, 21-27, I moved to take care of my mom's house for a couple months when she was ill. I noticed him distancing himself from me, so I made sure to be with him as much as possible, in person and online. But then he had less and less time. He said he needed to focus on university for now. He finally started warming up when my mom was fine. I told him I would be moving back soon. Whoopsie, he thought I broke up with him since I moved away to take care of my mom, and now has a girlfriend. I date shy nerds who seem kind and loyal and IDKWTF. I'm doing wrong, but now I'm single, confused, and probably about to be childless. Haha. Story 58. He was a 5-star Klingon, always wanted to hang out every day despite the fact we lived within 15 minutes of each other, had no friends of his own. When I would go hang out with my besties, all girls, would still blow up my phone and want to see me despite me having plans telling him in advance. When I'm with my besties, am not on my phone, would always say you're so beautiful, I'm so ugly. I was 23, 24, and he was 2 years older than me. Felt so suffocated, And I remember telling him, too, that sometimes I need my own space and can't see him every day. Had still drive to my house despite me saying I was busy or couldn't see him that day. Got fed up with him, hung out with a guy Bestie, who I had known since high school, the BF at the time. Didn't like me hanging out with any guys at all. Told him, oh, well, you must see him because he's leaving Cali. I've known my Bestie longer than him. Broke up with the BF, told my Bestie. He took me to Knott's and said, K that guy. Story 59. I was holding a bunch of candy in my hand, and I offered my GF one. She slapped all the candy out of my hand and started laughing. I just stood there dumbfounded and upset. She said she was joking and she apologized, but we broke up shortly after that. Story 60. My best friend wanted to ask a guy out. The guy's best friend was also single. She asked me if I could ask the best friend out. At the same time, she asked the guy she was interested in out. She said it would be easier than trying to catch him alone. It would feel less awkward. She'd have me for moral support, and she could suggest double dates, which she felt would make him more likely to say yes. The friend was a reasonably cute guy who was already in my social circle, and double dates sounded fun, so I agreed. They both said yes, and we did have fun going out together. The guy I'd asked out was shy, though, and the dates were our only interactions, always arranged by my bestie. Then, one day, for reasons unknown, she said she needed to break up with her guy and asked me to break up with mine, for almost the same reasons as when we asked them out. I felt like shoot about it, but he really hadn't put in much effort anyway, so I went along. Middle school romance. Story 61. I was redecorating my apartment and planned on hanging up a decorative mirror. He was extremely confused as to why and insisted I hang up a painting instead. Multiple times. He wasn't an interior decorator or anything like that. It weirded me out so much I ended it the next day. We had only been on a few dates, so no loss there, LOL. Story 62. The pettiest reason I've ever broken up with anyone is no particular reason at all. I just didn't want to date him. There was nothing wrong with him, and any problems in our relationship were mostly my fault. I just wasn't happy. Hope he's doing well these days. Story 63. Dislike her cat. I don't mind cats, but she had a formerly stray feral cat, and he was just a male body part. I'd be laying in her bed naked after some activities, and he'd come lay on my lap on top of the blanket, and as soon as I'd move, he'd start violently attacking the sheets. Needless to say, I wasn't about to get my male body part clawed. I also had a dog that I knew wouldn't put up with his shoot, and I never asked someone to get rid of a pet, so I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. Story 64. It was a super hot day. I was painting the fence, took a break, and was drinking the last cold Diet Coke and smoking a cigarette I had borrowed from the neighbor, and my fiance walked up, took the borrowed cigarette out of my hand, and put it out in the last cold Diet Coke. Story 65. I feel really bad for this, but I broke up with a guy because he didn't flush his toilet paper. I understand now that it's more of a cultural thing as he didn't grow up with the same plumbing as is in the US, but at the time I was disgusted and could think of nothing else when I looked at him. It feels very petty now. I never told him the reason or ever mentioned it to him. Story 66. Melty ice cream. It was common knowledge I won't eat ice cream if it's melting. He brought me home a huge melting ice cream cone. It was the straw that broke the camel's back with that loser. I met my husband a month later, and now we have 2 beautiful daughters. Story 67. I was dating a chef who was a big deal in my city. I went to her house for a date where she was cooking for me for the first time. The risotto was fantastic, but she served this salad with fresh crab in it, and I kept finding bits of crab shell in the salad. I finished dinner, we had intimacy, and I slept over only to go home the next morning and ghost her. She messaged me a few times after, with her last message being something like, "That crab salad wasn't that bad, was it?" I'm not really sure why I was turned off by a trivial thing, but I was. I'm a jerk. Story 68. He sent a super cheesy and basic love song to me. I am talking like the probably Googled love song and sent the first thing. At the time, I was a pretentious music snob and it gave me the ick, so I broke up with him. However, I think I actually dodged a bullet because now the guy has a whole Disney tattoo sleeve on his arm. Story 69. Loki. Well, I kind of got annoyed at his vaping constantly. I didn't mind the clouds or smell, but the fact he had to constantly vape really bugged at me. I got the ick one day when we were sat watching a film and that stupid crackling noise from puffing just kept happening. Story 70. I was super into powerlifting at the time. He wasn't, which was fine, but when we were horsing around, I went to pick him up, and not only was I able to pick him up, it was effortless, like picking up a toddler, and I disliked all the attraction for this dude left my body, but it did, so I had to end it. Story 71. I spent Christmas with her family and they had none of the warmth of my own. They weren't even toxic. They just weren't friends. Like it was an obligation to see each other for the holidays and not joyful. She's also into Reiki and spiritual stuff on a level my skeptic jerk couldn't handle. Story 72. She did not know who Arthur Miller was. On a date, she had asked about my dreams in life, and I told her I wanted to be recognized for my work the way Arthur Miller was. She said, "Who's Arthur Miller?" She ended up dating my roommate who appreciated the less cerebral things about her. Story 73. Not a relationship, but dating. Drove a brand new car. Always talked about money, always bragged about knowing how much things cost, always name brand or designer clothes, etc. He didn't realize I worked at the bank where he held his accounts because he never asked about me. Always in the negative, and mommy always came to the rescue when the overdraft was severe. Told him I don't think I was his type. Really though, he wasn't my type. Financially stupid while being braggadocious and arrogant. Story 74. She would talk on the phone and make plans with people who I thought were her friends, then talk shoot about them a lot to me afterwards. Almost high school drama gossip type behavior, and we were both early 30s. I realized after she got a call from someone and talked to them happily and immediately told me how much of a meanie that person can be sometimes that I wanted no part of that drama. If you do that regarding friends, who's to say you wouldn't do that with me rather than talk about any issues? Story 75. My ex broke up with me because I wasn't available to help him during March break. Sent him screenshots of myself asking if he needed anything. But nope, 3 months later, I was dead to him. There were real reasons, but the only thing he could tell me was that. Story 76. It's on me for dating someone 7 years younger, 32 and 25. But Kiss from a Rose came on the radio, and she was like, "I've never heard this song." That was the "we're not compatible" moment for me. It's not that I'm some huge Seal fan. It's just, come on. Kiss from a Rose. Story 77. We were talking about the passing penalty, and I said I liked how Idaho did it. It was on the books, but reserved for the most heinous of crimes. Like there would be decades between uses of it, because normally they'd just lock you up for life. She thought it was banned in Idaho. It wasn't, and got really weird about it. Like she was pissed off that I said something that wasn't true. We were driving, and when we got to my hose, I just pulled my phone out, looked it up, and handed it to her. Her whole tone changed. And then she was telling me why she had gotten it wrong. But I didn't really care because she had just been pretty rude to me about it for pretty much no reason. Like even if I was wrong, she didn't need to handle it that way. I was already not sure about it. I could tell that she could get very pissed off pretty easily. So I ended it the next day. And I got the nastiest string of text messages. Then she comes around to my apartment a week later to try to reconcile, but it was too late. I already had seen enough. Story 78. I'm not sure if this counts since we only went on one date, but did a dinner movie date with a gal in college. We do an Italian place near the theater. We're chatting about food, and I ask her what kinds of places she likes to go, and she casually drops a, "Oh, I don't really like any ethnic foods at all. I'd never go to any non-Italian restaurant if it were up to me." And that was the moment I decided there was no future. Story 79. Weirdest thing in high school, a girl was interested in me, started talking to me, and that night she asked me to be her boyfriend. It was Friday night. We talked all weekend, and she said she wanted to go to the prom. Everything seemed to be great all weekend, and Monday night I called her, and she answered the phone with, "Stop calling me, you creep." LOL, never talked to her again, and literally sat next to her in class the rest of the year. Story 80. Middle of the argument, I calmly told her to not interrupt me and let me finish my thought. I got about 5 words out before she butted in. I promptly turned my jerk around without saying anything and walked the other direction. She got, "We're done," after she yelled, asking where I was going. Story 81. I broke up with somebody, BC. He made this weird, loud, groaning, grunting noise when he came. Normally, I'm super into a vocal man, but this was such a weird, loud, groaning noise. It sounded like an animal or something. He did it every time. Eventually, I asked him about it, and he said he has to make that noise when he comes. Or like it was involuntary or something. IDK, it's petty, but it gave me such an ick. I was like, I can't do this every time. Like, I can't even come BC. It turns me off so much. He was otherwise very nearly perfect. Tall, hot, smart, kind, educated, such a bummer, but I can't have terrible intimacy forever. Story 82. She said nothing to me, and I didn't do the breaking up. She did. She broke up without explaining herself, and several weeks later, she framed me for shoplifting at the store that she is an employee of. No charges were filed, but I was given a 30-day ban. Nobody spoke about it. Story 83. It was a buildup of things. She got angry at me because I dragged her into a bookshop after coffee and she doesn't like books. I discovered that she thought stars were other planets with aliens living on them. We had a planned outing to meet my brother at a market and were 2 hours late to meet him because she wanted to laze around and take phone calls instead of get ready and meet him on time. Petty things in some ways, but nah, this girl was not for me. Story 84. I couldn't cook for her because she couldn't handle spice at all, like more than a touch of black pepper, and it was too much for her. I'm a darn good cook, and one of my ways of showing love is by cooking for other people. She was otherwise a lovely young lady, but I just couldn't move forward with someone I can't cook for without seriously muting abilities and habits I've spent years developing. Story 85. It was a short-lived high school romance. He made me a burlwood table and woodshop. Yes, it was the 70s. And on the underside engraved some Allman Brothers lyrics. You are my blue skies, you're my sunny days. But he spelled it your. I had to break up with him. My older sister told me to get the table first and then break up with him. It was really beautiful. But I just couldn't do that. I can't date a stupid guy. Story 86. This girl I started seeing, who I was super into and thought was super hot, abruptly went away for 2 weeks after we went on a couple of dates. I ended up meeting another girl, and then the first girl labeled me as some skeezy player or whatever. We were close co-workers. Story 87. The first time I was hanging out with someone, and we were kind of dating. We were young, like pre-teens. My grandpa got the tractor and the pieces of wood on ropes attached to the tractor. He made a second one for the boy. The game was try and stand on the wood while grandpa drives a tractor around, slowly getting faster. Old tractor. Didn't go fast at her best. The boy got scared. I figured I didn't want any part of a city boy afraid of falling down from a 1/4 inch of wood. I'm now much older and married to someone who would take turns pulling each other around. Farm life fun is unique. Story 88. He shaved his beard. I have trouble recognizing faces and have autism. So it was like getting to know a complete stranger that wanted to also kiss me. And this stranger barely had a jawline too. Immediately upon seeing his face, I walked out and said I'd talk to him when his beard grows back. After 6 weeks, it grew back, but it just wasn't the same and I couldn't get past what I saw. Story 89. He had small hands. He was a fit, attractive Air Force pilot who was into me. And to be completely honest, aim a 5, maybe a 6 on a good day. Dude was like a solid 8, 9, except for his tiny hands. It wasn't a hand difference or anything, just his typical adult male hands were small and dainty. In plus size, and I just couldn't fathom those little hands on my larger body, which was already significantly bigger than him. I'm happily married now, but when I was dating, I had a decent amount of body issues. It'd been with guys who weighed less than me before, but something about his little hands on my not-so-little body made me cringe. Story 90. She confided in me that she has a dieting issue whereby almost everything gives her bad diarrhea. She listed all these foods that give her diarrhea 100 of the time, and they were all foods we'd eat together all the time. She didn't mind her diet at all to prevent the diarrhea. Then she said she has had diarrhea almost every day for as long as she could remember. This girl was fine too, y'all. Easy 10 and 10 light-skinned Mexican girl with giant beautiful lips, big brown doe eyes, and a heart-shaped bumper. I couldn't do it. I despise excrement. And I just couldn't get the images out of my head. Story 91. He drove on the right side of the highway under the speed limit and slowed down to 50 in a 65 for every single car to merge in front of him when cars to the left were doing speed limit or faster. Get this, we had 30 minutes left in our commute. I've never had a commute go from 30 to 40 minutes due to driving habits. Story 92. Not mine, but from my coworker. Her husband was a spitter, constantly spitting into things and leaving it. One night while they slept, he woke up, grabbed her water bottle that was on her side of the nightstand, spit in it, and fell back asleep. Coworker wakes up a bit later, is parched, and takes a swig, loogies and all. She kicked his jerk out that night. She said their marriage ended for a lot of reasons, but said he had always been disgusting. Guess that was the last straw. Story 93. Basically, the minute we finished with what felt like a very planned on her part intimate moment, it was literally our first time having intimacy. Right after finishing, she casually asked if I would walk her dog for her when she's at work a few times a week. Like, since we did that, you have now been promoted to dog walker. I mean, in second thought, not the worst trade, but bizarre. It was straight up weird, and I never spoke to her again, LOL. Story 94. I was seeing a girl and we went on 2 dates. One day she asked me if I have any fudge buddies and I said no. How about you? She said not fudge buddies, but there is this guy. He is like a brother, but we do blow jobs. I immediately stopped looking at her face. The phrasing was really bad. I stopped talking to her for 6 months, but I started hanging out with her again and dated her for 2 months, and it was the most misread relationship of my life. Don't ignore red flags. Story 95. Not necessarily an ex, but I had a major crush on a guy in college. Everything he did was quirky and funny. He was kind, goofy, the works. Then he cut his hair, went from longish and shaggy to a buzz cut. Suddenly his antics were less endearingly goofy and more cringe. Still a nice guy, but the attraction instantly fizzled out. He didn't know, and he was interested in another girl, so it worked out in the end. Story 96. We went to IKEA, I bought a new bookcase for my home, and she bought some shoe storage for hers. My bookcase was laid in its box for 2 weeks before I realized how lazy I was being and actually put it together. Her box was stood upright in the kitchen for over a year, and not once did she think to take the 30 minutes to put it together. It was indicative of a larger issue of her having no drive to do anything, but that was a real kicker. Story 97. This girl I worked with had me come over to her place. I used her bathroom. It was so gross. She started putting the moves on me, and I told her I think I should go. After growing up in a house full of women who would complain about boys being so messy, I get really annoyed when I meet a woman who can't keep a clean bathroom. If there are any women reading this, practice what you preach. Story 98. Not really an ex. We were just dating for some time. I was an extra in Game of Thrones, and one day I showed her a picture someone took of the day we were filming, where me and some other people were chatting dressed in our costumes. I was excited for her to see it because it was amazing for me to be part of the show. She just looked in the picture and said, "Who's the meanie you're talking to?" Story 99. I took him to urgent care for virus or something, and when they looked in his ears, they stopped the exam to pull out the gnarliest wad of earwax I had ever seen in my life, and then continued with the rest of it. I broke up with him after I got him back to his place because it grossed me out so much. Story 100. There was a myriad of reasons, but my mom said she would pay for the DSI that I had on pre-order if I broke up with my now ex, IDK, if that counts, since there were plenty of reasons. But I like to laugh at the thought I more or less broke up with someone for a DSI. Story 101. I still regret this to this day, but I broke up with a girl who would have done anything for me because I didn't like her laugh and she didn't understand how to arch her back right for intimacy. We were 17, I was an idiot. And then I started dating another girl like a week later who had never even been kissed. Story 102. Asked if she wanted to go for pho, she said yes, but after she did an errand for her brother. I waited 2 hours and she didn't tell me she was done or ready to go. I messaged her and she didn't even acknowledge I was waiting. I was hungry and done with her. I sent her a savage breakup text and then I played Apex Legends. Story 103. Left the Airbnb in a trashy state saying that's what the cleaning fee is for, which goes against my personal values. Only time I got a negative review. The owner even got aggressive, rightly in part. Genuinely created anxiety for me, ended the relationship. Story 104. I was a really poor student barely, affording a rent, and had a fight in the morning with the neighbors over a public parking spot. I got in the IT boat by mistake a year before, and that day I got a 150 raise, which I negotiated with my balls straight on the table when management asked me in a private meeting what they can do to stop everyone leaving. The only thing I did for the rest of that day was to look for a new home, found an exceptional deal for a new apartment in like half an hour. It was 2011 and the house market was pretty low. By 6 p.m., I shaked hand with the owner, and by 8 p.m., I already had a small loan done for the 5 deposit, which had to be paid until all the papers for the main loan are done. That would be around 3 months, just enough so my new salary would be considered by bank. I was still 2K short for the loan side costs and was discussing with my girl how to put all of that aside. She was also a broke student, but somehow she had some money aside and bought without asking tickets to Paris to celebrate while I was supposed to cover the rest of the costs, which was at least 1.5K. So yay, I dumped her so rough she moved to another city. But I still wonder from time to time if I overreacted because we were both too young for that kind of stuff. Money-wise, I'm way better now, but that doesn't matter anymore, and I feel better on my current path. Story 105. We'd been dating a few months, but she made dinner one night for us while she was over. Made ravioli with red sauce. But when she got her plate ready, it was just the ravioli, straight from a pot of boiling water. No sauce, not even like salt and butter, just raw cheese ravioli. There were a few other signs I didn't think it was going to work out for me, but that was the cherry topper for me. I noped out and I'm much better off for it now. Haha. Story 106. He gave me the ick. He took 5 milliliters of THC and had a panic attack. It was a planned experiment. Logically, I get it. Panic attacks happen epically with THC. Unfortunately, my body said nope. Took me a couple times of seeing him again to figure out what happened. Story 107. We weren't officially dating, but we were in the a few dates and lots of talking stage. And he was just really lonely and also the type who needs constant conversations. Like he just wanted to talk all the time about absolutely nothing. I'd put my phone down, then pick it back up after 3 hours of work, and there would be like 5 texts from him, all of them absolutely pointless statements about what he was doing in the moment. They weren't even exciting updates. Like if he got a tattoo or watched a great new movie, that'd be one thing, but these were like, I really want scrambled eggs. Should I make some? Or I just played Overwatch for 2 hours, LOL. And he would do this all day, like every other hour. It was absolutely harmless, but also felt very smothering. Story 108. Not an ex, but I stopped dating her after 3-4 weeks because of the smell downstairs. She was clean and all, but still had this strange smell. Also, she was more curvy than me, and since the first time I had an unpleasant feeling to FK a wall, or something like a 40-50 IO mom. She was only 31. Besides that, I think she was a good but very insecure and a little chaotic person on so much little things, and it started to bother me too. Epilogue. She started to blame me on things out of the blue in the bed without any communication before. Then another day she tried to organize a dinner or something those lines by message. I didn't responded. She came back later with a "I understood. I hope you'll find what you're looking for" message. Like she concluded, I was dating her only for intimacy without realizing that I gradually refused it. I didn't even open it and let her with a not read. Funny enough, we saw each other on the same street few months later, and she instantly looked down. Story 109. Technically, she broke up with me. She thought I wasn't bad enough. She was so used to fuck boys that me being a gentleman made her think I was soft. That's fine. I sent her a picture of her name written in cursive using some rope next to handcuffs and a riding crop saying, "Sorry you missed out on the fun." Some sexting back and forth, and gave her the best time of her life a couple days later. We were FWB for a bit, but dating was off the table because she was too quick to judge me.